Good morning, participants, and welcome to Manage Your Time using 3 easy steps. My name's Crystal Tureen, and I am part of the Columbia University's Human Resources Department, specifically within the Learning and Development Department. It's a pleasure to have you all on today's webinar. I will be your facilitator. Alongside with me facilitating is Victoria Durden. You can reach her in the chat box if you have any technical concerns throughout today's webinar. Also, if you have any questions about the content, please put them in the chat box. And keep in mind that we will remain on mute today, and our video will also remain disabled as we work throughout today's content. I'm very excited to share all of the content with you today, and to get us started, I just want to let you know that we'll be using the chat box feature. So if you haven't already, please open your chat box so that you can input your answers throughout today's webinar. We'll also be using a polling feature, so that way you can share your feedback anonymously. So to get us started, welcome again, and I want you to go ahead to the chat box and enter your department or school name as well as your campus location. I'm here on the Manhattanville campus. We continue to evolve here uptown, and we have a number of participants logging on from our various campuses. I saw the law school is on. I know we have some folks from the Morningside campus, as well as our medical center and Manhattanville campus. Now, regardless of which campus you are on, I could imagine that you have had mornings like myself where you've woken up late, your alarm didn't go off as expected, and your morning is just in a disarray. Let alone once you get to the train station, your train is delayed too. And this is the day that you have tons and tons of meetings, and you check your email on the way in, and your manager has emailed you several times. Now, this isn't my ideal morning, and I bet it's not yours. So if we had to put a visual on our morning, it would probably look something like this: a bit of a storm on the way. And I don't know if you're like me, but I don't like storms, and I don't like storms without umbrellas especially. It's not good for my hair. So if you do have this type of morning, what do? Well, that's why we're here today. We're here to learn techniques and tools to help us navigate our time, both during storms and during my favorite, pleasant sunny days, where the skies are clear and I know what I'm expecting. Now, this doesn't mean every day is going to be pleasant and bright, but we can definitely work towards managing our time. So that reaches us to our objectives for today. So our workshop objectives, we're going to identify our time management style. So to manage your time best, you need to know what style you have when it comes to managing your time. So we're going to start out today's webinar with identifying our time management style. We will also gain a strategy to maximize your time with a long to-do list. Now, I know here at Columbia, we like to say, oh, we can wait until the summer. Things will slow down. They usually don't. We always have those long to-do lists. So I'm going to share some techniques with you on how to manage your work during high points and low points. And then our last objective for today is to review techniques for confirming work expectations and timelines. Now, managing your time also has to do with managing the message. And we can manage our message that we put out there for our colleagues to receive, and this will help us limit those interruptions that you might be facing. Having worked here at Columbia for over 6 years, I have found that the summers doesn't allow us the time to do the projects that we always think we want to do or can do, but if we manage our time effectively, we can do those projects with the right tools. So I want to introduce you to the time management framework. And this has helped me here throughout my time at Columbia. And it's just following these 3 easy steps: determine, decide, and design. So we will go through each step, step by step. And the first step is to determine your style. So here we will find out what our time management style is. And in order to find out what your time management style is, I want to present you with a poll opportunity. So remember, in the beginning, I said we will complete an anonymous poll. So I'm going to present you with a scenario. And when you're answering this scenario, I want you to answer it as honest as possible. Think about yourself and how you like to manage your time. Let's try not to think about who we want to be, who we could be, who we're striving to be, but let's think about our current state. So let's ask yourself, which is more like you? So imagine it's Monday morning and you walk into work and your manager asks for an ad hoc report. It's due at 3 p.m. As you're working on the report, your phone is ringing non-stop, and most of the calls are from a colleague in accounting. While the phone is ringing yet again, your manager stops by for the 3rd time to see if you have any questions about the ad hoc report. Considering the scenario that I just read to you all and that you see on screen, which statement do you agree with most? Is it A, never is my workday like this and that's okay with me? Is it B, sometimes my workday is like this and I enjoy having this sense of urgency and having it more? Is it C, often my workday has this sense of urgency and it's perfect as it is? D, occasionally my workday is like this, and I would prefer fewer urgent days. Or is it the last option, E? My workday is always like this, and I would welcome additional tasks. So I'm going to open the poll. And if you would, go ahead and enter your answer. You'll see the answers on your screen, and this will help us identify our time management style. I'll keep the poll open for about another 15 seconds. And so just remember, answer as honest as possible. You want to answer as your true self, and we can always work towards having different types of time management style, but we want to gauge what our current time management style is. So I'll leave it open for just another 2 seconds, and I'll close the poll for any last responses. All right, so the results are in, and most folks answered D. Occasionally, my workday is like this, and I would prefer fewer urgent days. And so that's also my answer too, just some self-disclosure for you all. So what does this mean for us? How do I know what my time management style is? Well, I'm going to share with you what these results mean. So if you answered A, you have an extreme need for consistency and strongly reject variety. Not a lot of folks answered A, only about 5 of us answered A. And this answer just lets us know that we like our day to be pretty standard and we don't like a whole bunch of surprises. So if you answered A or even B, you're somewhere in that variation. Now, if you answered C, and about 14 of us answered C. You have an equal desire for consistency and variety. So you're okay with having a standard day without a whole lot of surprises, but you don't mind having both at the same time. And then for those of us who answered D and E, which is the majority of us on today's webinar, you have a moderate need for variety with only an occasional need of consistency, and or you have an extreme need for variety and strongly reject consistency. I fall in that boat. I find that I work well when I have variety in my day, and I don't necessarily care for when things are too consistent for myself. So I'm going to close out the poll. And now that we have our time management style, we can move on to the next step with some new information. And so the next step in our time management framework is to decide. So this will allow us to decide how we want to work on our work. And so, part of deciding what to work on first, we need to know what's urgent and what's important. So, right now, I want to introduce you to the priority matrix. Now, the priority matrix is broken out into 4 quadrants. We go into full detail of this priority matrix in our 3-hour course that we'll be offering this fall. I'll share those details with you, but today I want to introduce it to you and we'll dive in deeper to Q1 and Q2. So, with Q1 in mind, quadrant 1, this is where our urgent and important tasks lie. Also, crisis and emergencies. Now, when you think urgent and important, if you think back to that scenario where we walked in and our manager asked us for that ad hoc report that was due today at 3 p.m., let's call that an urgent matter, right? It's something that's due today. Now, an example of Q2 or not urgent and still important task would be if our manager walked in and asked us for a report, but it's due next week. Since our manager asked us for that report, it's still important, but it's not urgent because it's not due today. So those type of tasks would fall in Q2. Q3 is where our urgent and not important tasks lie. So these would be considered our interruptions. Now, let's say if we're still thinking about that report, if our manager assigned the report to a colleague of ours and the report was due today still. Well, our colleague trusts our opinions and trust our review. They would ask us to review the report before they turn it in. So this is urgent because it's due today, but it's not important because it's not directly related to us. But since we're good colleagues and we enjoy working with others as much as possible, we would review the report. Now, the last one, Q4, which comes and goes in my life for sure, it is the not urgent and not important tasks. So these are our time wasters. For me, this is a stress reliever. So that would be either checking the New York Times or checking Facebook. This would help you just relieve some of that pressure throughout your day. So again, we're going to go deeper into Q1 and Q2. So quadrant 1, this is where, again, we have those urgent and important tasks. So this includes crisis, pressing problems, anything that was postponed from Q2, last minute demands, deadline driven projects. So again, thinking about that report that's due at 3 o'clock today, that would be a Q1. So that's something that we want to work on immediately because it's both urgent and important. Same thing if we worked as a student advisor and students came to us looking for course registration information throughout the semester. If it's going into the fall semester and a student comes in and needs guidance on a fall class and registration is about to close either today or tomorrow, that would be considered an urgent and important matter. To take a closer look at Q2, this would be our not urgent and still important tasks. So this is anything that falls under strategic planning, working towards goals, relationship building, recognizing new opportunities, and prevention. So if we thought about that report again, working on it before it's due and it's due a week from now, then that would be considered something that's not urgent because it's not due now, it's due a week from now, but it's still important. Same goes with our scenario with the student. If the student walks in and we're going into the fall semester, but they're looking for spring course guidance, that wouldn't be urgent, but it's still important because we want to make sure this student has the right guidance when it comes to the spring semester. Now that we understand what Q1 is, those are our urgent and important tasks, and what Q2 is, not urgent, but still important, we can move on to the next step in our time management framework. But before we go there, I have another opportunity for you to share some of your feedback in the chat box. So I want to find out what happens when we spend too much time on urgent tasks. So those tasks that are urgent and important, Q1, what happens to you when you spend too much time in Q1? I know it happens to me. Sometimes I'm energized because I have a lot to do and I have to do it all right now. But other times I can burn out because I'm doing so much all at once. So, what happens to you? Go ahead and share your answers in the chat box. And I'm going to review some that I've prepared for you all today. So, the impact of living in Q1. We have to do everything ourselves is part of your mindset. I'm the only person that can work on this task. And sometimes when we are taking on more than we can handle, we wind up having incomplete tasks. And we can also assume that we can work late to catch up on our task. Now that it's summer, I'm not uh, unlikely to work late, but it's not my favorite time to work late because I do want to enjoy those sunny days that I showed you earlier. Some other downfalls to working in Q1 too much too often. We can miss deadlines because we're working on everything all at once. We believe everything is important, so we fail to prioritize and we're working on tasks all at once. And then lastly, we can submit our work with poor quality. Now, that's not something that I'm looking forward to, submitting my work with poor quality, because you know what? You're going to have to do it again. So, why do we want to stay out of Q1? Well, clearly to avoid these pitfalls. So, some reasons to negotiate your time back. It improves your productivity. We're not doing the same work over and over again just to correct our mistakes. It increases your efficiency. You're doing things right the first time around. And guess what? It makes you feel a whole lot better when you are working towards your goals effectively. Some other reasons to avoid working in Q1 nonstop. It allows you to identify priorities so you know what to work on when. Not everything is always urgent and important. We can put some things on into our Q2 bucket. It reduces stress. I like being stress-free, and it also helps you achieve your goals. Right now, we're at the beginning of our fiscal year, so you can think about those goals that you put in and committed to for your performance evaluation. By complete task and meeting deadlines, that's helping you meet your goals. So again, I just want to review with you the priority matrix. This will allow you to organize your work and prioritize it so that you are meeting your deadlines and you're also meeting your goals. And just a reminder, we do review all of these quadrants in our full course, which I'll be sharing those details with you in just a moment. So this brings us to our last step. We've already reviewed two of the easy steps, determine and decide. Now we're moving on to design. So earlier I mentioned that you can manage the message, and that's where we are now. This is going to help us limit those interruptions and disruptions as we're working on meeting our tasks and managing our time. So what is all included in managing the message? Well, when we go heads down and we start working on a project or a task, we can communicate with our colleagues both before, during, and after we complete those tasks. So before we start on a task or a project, you want to update your colleagues regarding the progress of your target deadlines. Now, here at Columbia, our work is very interconnected and we are all working towards meeting the same deadline. So if you have a deadline that you're facing and you update your colleagues can work on their components of the work successfully without interrupting you as you're working on a specific task or even a different project. You also want to notify your colleagues in advance if you will be unavailable. This way, your colleagues don't interrupt you while you are unavailable. Now, once you've already notified your colleagues that I'm going heads down, I'm going to work on this task or project, then you can also put on automatic replies. This doesn't only just work when we step away for vacation time. You can also put those out of office email responses on. This way your colleagues know that you've acknowledged their email and you're not away on vacation, but you're just working on a task or a project. Another step we can take when we are working on a project is to break away for a moment, especially if we have questions. So, if we have questions, we can always address those obstacles with colleagues while we're working on a project or task. This will help us navigate completing that task more successfully because we're not sitting there stuck trying to answer our own questions. Now, once we've completed an assignment or a task, we're feeling really good about ourselves, go ahead and ask your colleague and manager for feedback. Here in learning and development, we see feedback as a gift. It allows me to work on items that I didn't know about. So, considering blind spots or just considering what I did well when I was completing that task. So, go ahead and ask your colleagues and manager for that feedback. Also, you want to consider any lessons learned about the project or activity. When you're working on a project or task, especially if you're doing it alone, you know the processes best. So you want to share what went well with your manager and or colleagues. And this is also a great time to advocate for those resources. Here at Columbia, we're always in need of additional resources because we are so efficient with our work. Well, we can get those resources by bubbling those requests up to our manager or even our colleagues if we need their help. So now that we know how to manage the message, we have completed all three steps today of our time management framework. So again, that's the determine, decide, and design. Just keeping it easy for us here, especially during these summer months. So, just for a review, when we determine our style, we can best manage our time because we know how we like to work, whether I want consistency in my day or variety. And I will share with you in just a moment the assessment tool so that you can verify your results if you didn't think this was me. And then the next step is to identify the importance level of your work. So, just considering that priority matrix so that you can organize your work based off of the urgent and important nature of your work. And then lastly, manage the message. This will help you work on your work as you want to, and it will also help you limit the interruptions that you might be facing. So, as promised, I want to share with you the tool that we use to identify our time management style. So, in the beginning, we discovered if we had an extreme need for consistency or an extreme need for variety. There is an assessment tool on lynda.com. The course title is Finding Your Time Management Style. And you can access lynda.com using your Columbia Uni credentials. And there you can complete the assessment style tool so that you can identify and confirm your time management style. You can also share this with your colleagues so that they too know how they like to manage their time. Another tool that we are all too familiar with, and I want to challenge you to look at it a little differently, is your weekly schedule. So today is Wednesday, we're halfway through the week, and I bet you have a number of things on your schedule for today and for the rest of the week. But I want you to think about reorganizing your schedule potentially in a qualitative way or a quantitative way. So, what do I mean by this? Well, qualitative. This approach would allow you to schedule the most meaningful tasks. So you'll schedule 1 to 2 urgent tasks and 3 to 4 important tasks. So on the screen, you'll see this is an example of what my schedule looks like. Today, we have that manager time webinar right there on the top, and I've marked it in red because it is an urgent task. Today was the day to have it. So it's definitely urgent and important. So that's not something that I want to reschedule and disappoint all of the folks on today's webinar. You'll also see I have some tasks marked in blue. So webinar key takeaways, I want to know what worked well today. And I will ask my colleagues for their feedback. And we'll also have an opportunity for you to share your feedback in just a moment. Workshop teach back, professional development, and that I marked as important. It's not urgent because it's not due today, but investing in myself is definitely important to both me and the department because it enhances what contributions I make in my role. So this is the qualitative approach. The quantitative approach that I want to share with you Include scheduling all your urgent tasks. So this is definitely an approach for my folks who enjoy variety. So you want to schedule all your urgent tasks and only one important task. So what does this look like? It would still be my calendar on the screen there, and you'll see I have a lot more marked in red. So I have the manage your time webinar. You also have takeaways, metrics, follow-up emails, and room setup later on in the week. So you'll see that I'm working in an urgent nature. What fell off though? My professional development. So I didn't have time to schedule that one important task. I still have the workshop teach back there because that's something that needs to happen, but I did miss the opportunity to invest in myself. So as you schedule your task and schedule your calendar, just keep in mind what you're putting off for another day and ensure that you're making time for it. So we're getting close to concluding today's webinar, and I've shared a number of tools with you. You now know your time management style. I've shared the priority matrix with you. You also have a new approach to scheduling your calendar. So now that we have these new tools, tell me, how do you want to manage your time? What important tasks do you want to make time for? I know for me, before the summer is out, I definitely want to invest in myself and my learning. And you've done that today by attending today's webinar. Go ahead and enter your responses in the chat box of what important tasks, so what from Q2 do you want to work on before the summer is out and we're back in the fall semester? And I'm going to open the chat up so that I can see. Staying at work longer, okay. Let's see. Organize my email, that's a good one, definitely. Plan trips. Meeting prospects is important, and it's not urgent if you schedule it out, definitely. We do have our certificate series. I'll share our website information with you all in just a moment so that you can register for one of our certificate series programs. And bringing on new staff members, definitely. Sounds like someone was managing the message and getting some new resources within their department. So that's fantastic. I hope you've taken away a lot from today's webinar, and I have a few additional resources that I want to share with you all. And so those last resources that I want to share with you, in addition to the new tools that you gained today, is that in-person workshop, Manage Your Time and Priorities, will review in much greater depth how to manage your time. We will facilitate that this fall. It will be held here in the Studebaker building. Our course registration will open up in just a few weeks, this August 2019. You also can access the assessment tool that we will post online, and that's just to validate your time management style. You can share this with any of your colleagues. Today's PowerPoint will be available to you to also reference. Some reading material for those long train rides that you may or may not have. You can organize tomorrow today 8 ways to retrain your mind to optimize performance at work and in life. That's written by Dr. Jason Selp, Tom Bartow, and Matthew Rudy. And then lastly, you can always reach out to myself, Victoria, Tania, here in Learning and Development, and our email address is hrlearning@columbia.edu. So this concludes our webinar today. I appreciate you all joining today's webinar. If you have any questions, we have just about 2 more minutes. So feel free to type in those questions. And at the end of today's webinar, we'll also have a poll for you all. So if you have any questions, feel free to enter them now. I will definitely share the slides, yes. And again, I appreciate you all logging on today. It was great having you, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your summer. Feel free to reach out.